it felt like it blended brilliantly everything that we were looking for at the time. So the sort of universal questions that I mentioned before you watched, about what it is to be a family, nature versus nurture, and also whether a relationship can survive that sort of a bomb going off in it, which I think you can kind of see is starting to crack for Pete and Maddie. So we love that about it, but also the propulsion of the kind of the thriller elements that catch you by surprise. It felt like we could tell a story that was a character-led drama and yet also had this genre element all bundled up into one.
And why was it important to get Grace on board as well? I know you're very keen.
Yeah, really, really keen. Well, Grace can do all of that at once. She can tell an incredibly propulsive narrative that has pace and hooks, twists and turns that we all know you kind of need in television. But also, anyway, but I think partly because of her incredible and sort of random, seemingly, because she's a screenwriter now, but medical background, she could really get under the skin of these characters. And on top of that, because it was a story about a baby swap that's all started in a hospital, her actual medical expertise itself came to play in a major way. So it was sort of everything. We felt really lucky.
So for anyone who doesn't know, I'm trying to be I don't want to be jealous, right? But Grace is a former addiction psychiatrist and now a successful screenwriter. So you've got this medical history, as Kitty said. How did that help you in the writing process, Grace?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a fantastic story. Like Kitty mentioned, when I first read the book, I whizzed through it and immediately wanted to be part of the project. And I am a fully qualified addiction psychiatrist, but my last job, really randomly, was as a perinatal psychiatry consultant. So the subject matter, particularly for Neve's character, was really, really pertinent for me in making this. So yeah, I think all of the elements that you've just seen, really, really spoke to me when I read it.
And Grace, the show does deviate slightly from the book. Can you just talk a bit about in which ways that is?
Yeah, so, I mean, the book's premise, I think, is just so fantastic. We really stuck closely to that. What would you do if you found yourself in this situation? Episode 1 does stick quite closely to the book, but from episode 2 onwards, we added quite a lot of new elements. So the mediation scene, which was one of my favourite scenes to write, wasn't in the book at all. Like, they mention the mediation and the fact that they don't have it, but we kind of discussed it and we thought it would be really, really great to actually see what that would be like to have those two couples sitting with each other, having to discuss an issue and try and behave and play nice with the mediator. And things also like the charity gala at the end, it's not in the book. That was another idea that I thought would be quite nice again, to put these couples together and see if they can behave and play nice for their children. So we had a lot of fun adding various elements, but sticking to the initial premise and then sort of seeing how our couples reacted to that.
Yeah. Katie, you chose to relocate it from London to Cornwall. Can you talk a bit about that and what it was like filming down there?
Yeah, of course, that was a decision that we all came to together with Studio Canal as well. I guess that's two questions. So the filming was incredible, but moving it was for various reasons, partly the kind of epic scale and beauty that you can see on screen. I mean, the most pedestrian scene, there are no pedestrian scenes, but you could be walking down the street in London and it feels sort of regular, whereas walking along that coastline or wherever it is in Cornwall, it kind of gives it a completely different flavour. But also it felt really interesting to put these two couples in a tight-knit community. There's a kind of anonymity to London or to other big cities, which is really interesting to explore on screen often. But with this, especially when we're playing with wealth and class and those issues as well, sort of blowing it all up by putting them in a small town felt really exciting. And then shooting there was absolutely incredible, and I would want to do it again. I mean, it was hard because it's further from London than you kind of think. You are in the UK, but you're far away. Nick Pitt, our series producer, is nodding here. But the crews were incredible. The sort of the life on set was so vibrant, and it was difficult. You know, the weather. We were shooting from October to Christmas, so those cliffside scenes, you know, we would literally get kind of blown away some days. We were having to constantly change our schedules.
Hopefully not on the day that James was on that rock. We were just talking about
Yeah,
that.
James,
Very brave.
James going on that rock, that was a whole... We're glad, because it looks great, but that did not...
Tense.
I wasn't supposed to go that far.
All for the art.
They used it, so.
Neve, I want to talk to you about Maddie because she's been through so much. Of course, like birth, the premature birth, the postnatal depression, now this. When you read the script, like, what drew you to this role and what preparation did you do?
Well, that's kind of it. It's the more kind of obstacles and hurdles that is thrown at a character is a lot more interesting to get your
teeth into.
teeth into.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I said, someone asked me the other day. It was like, why did you want to be an actor? And it wasn't. It's not in the doing. It's in the thinking. So what do you want to think about? What do you want to spend your life thinking about? And I'm always fascinated with the psychology of people, and I'd worked with Grace before, and it's evident in her characters that she has such an incredible understanding of people and why they do the things that they do. And I think with Maddie, she's feisty. She kind of wears her heart on her sleeve, and yeah, to be given the opportunity to work with these two and Jessie. To explore themes that are quite intense and emotional. Yeah, it's always a gift. Yeah.
It seems particularly cruel that Miles weaponises her postnatal depression, and also the words of Pete uses it against her, almost to kind of portray her some unfit mother, or to drive a wedge between them. Can you talk a bit about that strand of the storyline, and also her relationship with Pete, because it's so different to the one of Miles and Lucy?
Yeah, I think for Maddie, it's that she hasn't actually processed her postnatal depression. And this is the first time, I think, you see this woman actually thinking about it or being forced to think about it because of it being used as ammunition against her. And it feels incredibly, like playing it, it feels incredibly unfair that is being used as a weapon against her. But yeah, it's the way in which Kate and Grace depicts those in the fragmented flashbacks is, I think images speak more than words, and you can't do a blanket statement of postnatal depression. Everyone's symptoms are different. It's like we all grieve differently. So this is just Maddie's experience of that time. And yeah, I think that what was interesting was the idea that this is someone who's actually being forced to relive it, because at the time when you're in it, you're not seeing it. And so it's like someone talking about it for the first time, but being forced to talk about it, and how brave that can feel.
Now, James, we're going to get to your character of Pete, but first we should say that you're exec producing on this. So I wondered how it was, juggling both that, the acting as well as the exec producing, and if it was a joy, if there were any challenges.
Yeah, it was Kitty and I made a movie over the pandemic called Rogue Agent, which was my first time I experienced that kind of juggle. This was our first TV show, obviously, and it was a different beast. I mean, we've been developing this for I think 4 or 5 years almost. So it's been a long journey. And I guess the biggest lesson / challenge was having the bandwidth to do both, and realizing that I had to at some point just step back from the producing and do my job, which was to be an actor and tell Pete's story. And there were moments when I really felt like I was doing less work than I would have done usually on Pete. You have the kind of stuff like the accent, and you kind of think about the physicality and the emotional journey, but there's a whole sort of slightly more abstract way of preparing, where you just sort of spend time ruminating on the guy and spending time. I like to spend time just sort of in that headspace working out who this person is, and I didn't do as much of that as I have done in previous jobs, because I was, the build up to a show, the pre prep is really stressful. And then I realised when I got on set that I had actually been in Pete's head for about 4 years already, and so the prep was kind of done already. And actually, I felt really empowered as Pete because he grew in that development process, and there was so many conversations for literally 3.5 years about who this guy was and his relationship with Maddie. So it was actually at the first a little nerve-wracking, thinking I hadn't done the work, and then I realised that I was so embedded in this story because it had been so long and such a sort of intense, thorough process. It was quite empowering.
Pete's a really nice guy, which is partly why he ties himself up in knots with the Stella situation. I was just in the audience going, no. But it's really interesting, as Kitty said, about nature and nurture, like in the view of parenthood and what it means. Because whereas Maddie at first is, really keen to get to know David, he struggles. Can you just talk a bit about that and the theme of nature and nurture? Not too big a question.
Yeah, nature and nurture. I mean, the question about good parenthood and does having masses of money and means make you good parents, and in the eyes of the institutions, Miles and Lucy, I guess, they can afford legal representation. They can kind of manipulate the system, but they also on the outside have all the means to be these brilliant parents. Well, the story, the question it asks and the kind of point it makes is that actually Maddie and Pete love Theo in the right way, and there's a nod to Theo and his kind of callous traits, and again, not to be a spoiler, but the question over which parents would suit him better and those kind of issues, and Pete and Maddie are definitely the right for him to be nurtured within his nature being one thing and then the kind of environment that he thrives in. So yeah, it definitely asks all those kind of questions. In terms of Pete, he thinks that the way to navigate this is to be really nice, and he is obviously a very good dad, and he creates this very loving space for his son. What was really enjoyable for me was exploring the kind of journey he goes on, realising that actually to play nice is not necessarily always right, and actually sometimes you've got to play nasty.
Because sometimes nice guys come last, and we don't want Pete to come last.
And he has this, and we had a lot of really interesting conversations around like the kind of masculinity that Pete represents, which is, he is a really modern man, and he makes really admirable choices in order to allow Maddie to have the life she has. She's a fantastic chef, and he gave up journalism in order to allow for her job, stay-at-home dad. And so in many ways he's incredibly admirable and representative of lots of young men. I know lots of men who are making those choices, and it's fantastic. He thinks that the right thing to do in a modern masculine way is to make space for his wife. That is true to a point, but then he realises through Maddie's instruction and guidance that actually to just make space is not often the right thing. You can't just be passive. You can't just sit back and allow for someone else to thrive. You have to step forward. And almost in face of Miles' confrontation and the playing nasty, he learns that to be strong, and it's not the gendered masculine thing, but to be a good husband, he needs to be stepping into that space and be confrontational to a point. So yeah, that was a really interesting job.
I think it is interesting in contrast to Miles, because his idea of alpha male Miles, his idea of masculinity is so around wealth, money, domination of the in the household, ruling the roost. It was really interesting to see those two things played out in the juxtaposition, which takes us neatly onto Miles, James. Oh my God, he's like the most hateful, abhorrent man on TV. Congratulations, it's a juicy role. I'm guessing it was a no-brainer to say yes to this, but what did you think when you read the script?
I just thought what a fantastic part, and it was just so much fun to figure out different ways to code everyone. And it was, we wanted to just make sure that there was subtler ways of doing it, and it obviously gets a bit bigger as it goes on. But especially for me, some of the most fun parts were the earlier stuff. Like correcting wee bits here or undermining or fun.
It's very devious. Actually, what I love about him, he's not one-dimensional baddie, right? So we're going to see it a bit more. No spoilers. We're going to see it more, but his childhood has kind of informed the man he is today. Yep. What can you allude to? And also, Grace, I want to draw you in, because when we were out there, you were saying you really loved writing for the character of Miles. But first of all, what can you hint, James? Please be careful, obviously.
Well, yeah, I think what we start to, it's probably clear, but he's a self-made man, and so there's obviously questions about where this comes from, but his ability to have created this life for himself, he's had to be singular in his, his drive, his goal towards it. He's tenacious. He just will never ever lose. Like, there's just no losing, and I think that's his ethos. He'll just never ever give up. No matter what happens, he's going to find a way. So, these people are just obstacles in his way. He wants. You find out later why it was important for him to have a son and why he wanted to do so. It's just an obstacle in his way. Nothing's going to stop him, and so this is a great part to play.
Yeah, Grace, tell us, why did you love writing about Miles?
I think a character like Miles is every writer's dream, and really being able to delve into the nastiness, the bad side of him, and give him some fantastic lines. I think that you played really well on screen and got some good reactions from the audience. I think it was really, really fun. I think as a character, he's hard to like, but in some ways, as you go through it, and you have a man who has had this awful thing happen to him. His child was swapped in hospital. So all four of our lead actors are in a very difficult position, and they're all reacting to something very difficult in different ways according to their kind of personality and some of their background. So yeah, I think it was really, really fun to write Miles and just have him be subtly dastardly and see him really pulling the strings throughout this whole thing, and like how he manipulates and coerces in order to get what he wants.
The Jameses, I believe you trained together at drama school. Was it nice? This is your first time appearing on screen, is it? Playing opposite each other, and adversaries too. So what was that like? Was it a lot of fun?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was really. Going back to the producing question, it was really, really exciting when we were sitting around who could play his roles, and I've seen James's career obviously explode, and he's so good. But we were in this. Not only were we in the same year at drama school, we were also in the same acting class, and so for 3 times a week we would do 3-hour sessions with this lady called Dee Cannon, who's sadly not with us anymore, but she was our very kind of iconic drama acting teacher. And it's like going, I mean, the rumours are true, it's like going through this kind of crude psychoanalysis without an analyst there, and you're broken down, you're built up, and James and I went through that, and we had some really special times back in 12 years ago in that class, and I remember thinking, like, this guy's so special. So then, jump 12 years later, or 8 years later, to be able to send your friend an email saying, there's this role, do you want to like go and have fun in Cornwall for 3 months? And luckily James jumped at it, and it was amazing. It was it was a lot of fun. I hope the other cast members didn't, or we didn't. We probably did for them, and just
Do you? Like a wee Rada story? Would you like one now?
Just listening to James McArdle just imitate Norton was probably the best.
I'm not showing you my Norton.
No, okay, fine. Neve, actually, what I wanted to talk to you about is the fact that Maddie is kind of a great nemesis. Like, she, Miles sees her as a nemesis, right? He's kind of intimidated by her strength and her autonomy. It's quite a fun dynamic. How was that to play?
With James.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying not to corpse half the time because there's one scene, sorry, there's one scene where he had to we had to open the door to James and he was just there with a gift. But McArdle, yeah, and he's like the cycling Santa. He's got like a red like a suit on.
Hot on top.
Not cycling Santa. But yeah, it's he brings so much. It's the little shallow kind of digs and the micro expressions that I suppose with Maddie, it's she is pretty fiery, and that's the problem. Is that you just see these two characters trying to constantly jab one another.
I know you've only seen the first 2, but there's a switch in the second half of the series where they're not giving anything away or anything, but it gets a lot darker, especially between the two of them. And so that was a really from the midpoint of the season, it does change, and it did feel like 2 halves. Like the more domestic, as you're saying, shallow kind of like niggles you do to each other, and then the second half of the series, there's a interaction between the two of us that was that's
Very
quite
dark.
surprising. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and it's but that was it's good when you're with three people that you trust and you like, and we actually all four of us have known each other from different projects, and Jess played my sister. Now my wife, I've done that a couple of times. But it was actually really helpful to have that previous. It meant when you started to do all this stuff about, you know, all the abuse stuff, all that coercive control stuff, it meant you have a shorthand with people you trust each other, rather than having to get to know someone from scratch. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it made a massive difference that we were all in Cornwall together for 3 months, and we didn't leave. Like, none of us. I mean, a couple of times maybe when people went home, but
It's very bonding then.
very funny. And as Kitty says, it's weirdly hard to get to.
Yeah.
It's like 5
You can't leave. I tried to leave. I tried to leave, and no one would let me. They said there's no one to de-ice the runway.
Wasn't that
Truly.
clip? Was that you trying to escape? We should talk, Kitty. We should talk about Jessica, because she's not here, but she gave an incredible performance as Lucy. Can you talk a bit about the character and also her performance, because it's very understated, but it's so affecting.
Yeah, it's such a shame she can't be here because she just does the most beautiful job. It's really difficult to talk about Lucy sort of across the whole series because you haven't seen 3 and 4, but you can feel her pain, can't you? I mean, you know, in those tiny moments, all she needs to do is sort of flick her eyes or bite her lip, and you know that she's feeling something. And yeah, James mentioned kind of coercive control. Their relationship is really complicated, and like Grace says, all 4 of them are reacting to this heinous news in slightly different ways, and Lucy is a really reserved, understated person, and so you can just tell that she's erupting on the inside but doesn't quite know how to express it or won't.
Mm-hmm. We should also at this juncture give a little shout out to the tiny actors. I mean, they say don't work with animals or kids. You've chosen 2 toddlers, probably more. What was it like, and also what was it like for you guys acting opposite them?
Finally, I was working in a professional museum.
It's pretty grim when they act you off the screen, you know. You don't have time to turn around and do a close-up because they're given gold, you know.
Yeah, they're coming for your crown.
Yeah.
They were brilliant.
And the way the film set changes, you know when one of the kids has arrived, because all the grips, these like, you know, sturdy blokes running the, you know, they all just go cooey, and little Albie and Fraser were heavenly. I mean, they were really, not as James said, they were weirdly professional, and they knew exactly what they were doing. But they had the whole crew around their little finger, you know, we all just melted.
One of them, I think, is 3 or 4, and again, I'm not going to give anything away, but there's a sort of big stunt coming up in one of the episodes, and everyone was like, is this wee kid going to be okay? And I was like, we'll look after him. The kid was fine. I was like, the kid was not bothered at all. And, like, so I was like, you know, trying to be calm for him, but I was like, oh my god. But the kids do their own stunts. I am much more precious.
Let's talk a bit more about being in Cornwall. Now, you had surfing lessons. How did that? You all got into the water first of all. How cold was it? Because I think you were filming in winter, were you?
We're filming from sort of October onwards, so October, November, December. It wasn't too cold. I tell you,
James is an avid wild water swimmer. He forces
okay.
everyone.
So for other people, it would have been a
so
bit cold, but for James, it was not too bad.
No, it was warm. It wasn't good. I thought it was good.
honestly, go to Cornwall off season at the beginning of the autumn. It's heaven. Because all the tourists go away, and we would just every weekend we would be surfing. It wasn't that cold. We were sort of accepted by the locals. We had our local bar. It was
nice.
yeah, it was really fun, wasn't it? But the water was fine.
And the surfing lessons, like who took to it? Neve, did you give it a go?
Yeah.
Neve can surf. Don't let you
Oh
can
really?
surf. You can't. Come on.
I could
Is she
surf,
the
yeah.
pro surfer among you?
Professional, yes. But you know what was strange? Like, so in the morning, James Norton would run onto the truck and he'd be like, oh my god, I nearly died this morning. I went in for a quick swim and a wave, and he'd drag me away and be like, James, can you keep that until like we finish the scene? Finish the series? But it was, yeah, the community down in Cornwall are fantastic, and the surfing is a huge part of Newquay, definitely. And there was this,
What about your surfing instructor was called
Pete.
Pete?
Yeah, we had a surf instructor called Pete, and frustratingly, that scene where you see me catch the wave was, I think, like the second day, or wasn't it? Was that, or maybe it was it was very, very early on, and then we stayed for 3 months and had all these surf lessons and became very close to this guy Pete, who is just every cliche of Cornwall in one person. He's gorgeous, like sort of happy hippie guy. By the end, we were gnarly. But that was very early. We were hopeless at the beginning.
But Pete
We
was a
got
good
there.
instructor, though.
The best. We
Yeah.
were very fond of Pete.
We are going to take questions from the audience, but before we do, I just wanted to find out, what do you hope the audience take from this? And then also, Grace and Kitty, I wonder if you could just tease what's coming up for the next 2 episodes without obviously giving away too much. First of all, yeah, I'll start. Don't worry. I'll start with Neve and James. What do you hope the audience? Your joint hope.
Oh God, I love TV that you like those kind of water cooler moments where you're kind of waiting for the next episode to happen, but trying to with something like this, it's a thriller, so you're trying to find out, you're trying to be smarter than the characters, and I always find with like a series like this is that, I don't know, you can watch it with your family and it kind of starts conversations of asking yourself, gosh, what would I do in that situation?
I think everyone at home is going to be thinking that, right? Yeah.
I sort of love that, a lot of dramas like that, thrillers, there's usually a whodunit element or there's a more procedural element. I quite like the idea that this has that element sort of subtly woven into it, but there is actually a character-led relationship drama, so I'd love people to be, sort of just trying to figure out who done it, but having that same enthusiasm and figuring out like who they sympathise with, who they support, or
how bad Miles is.
yeah.
James, what about you?
I just hope it leads to loads more work.
I thought.
What do I hope? I mean, I think it's great TV, and as Neve says, it's going to be hopefully that sort of bonding thing. The hook is so powerful. When you read the book and then Grace's great script. Every time you mention this story, what's Play Nice about? It's about two families who find out their kids were swapped at birth and ask the question, what would you do if you found out your child was not your own? It's such a good hook. That people immediately like, fuck, that's really, really powerful. So I hope that the power of that hook and then the thriller propulsive elements. And also, I know a lot of actors say this and it's kind of a bit of a cliche, but we really did, I know I said we had such a good time filming. It's like we made some really special relationships and you can tell, I think. I mean, some of those scenes when we're all kind of sparking off each other with the great script. Kate Hewitt was such a good director. Like, she's early in her career, but she's so good. I think it brings Kate loads more work because she deserves it. But I hope that the audience share in the pleasure we had making this, because it really was a fun experience.
Absolutely. And then Kitty, Grace, what can you tease? Artfully.
Do you want to take this?
So lots more twists and turns, and we will see more kind of intrigue between our couples as the pressure mounts on them, with the court case pending. It's very hard to do this without spoilers. Kitty,
I feel like you've done it. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly like James said. You see, just narratively speaking, there are court cases coming up. Who's going to get the kids? Are they going to be split up? All of those big questions. It sort of feels in a weird way, and this is not how the show. I hope this isn't sort of pitching the show in the wrong way, but in lots of ways, it's a custody battle in a traditional sort of divorce sense. It is that mediation and the kind of court cases that are coming up. It's about who would be better for said child, except that in this case it's two children, and it's a sort of horrible twist to it all. But you've got that to come, and exactly what's going on behind closed doors with both couples and whether they can survive it.
Very good. Okay, now time for some audience questions. If anyone's got a question, can you just put your hand up and say where you're from, and then go for it.
Lauren's got a microphone that she'll need to pass to you, if that's okay.
Unexpectedly shy crowd.
Anybody like to go? You've done such a good job, Kate. Go for it. If you could pass the microphone. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Natalie Jameson, freelance radio journalist. I wanted to ask Grace how much collaboration there was with JP about the book and bringing that, and what that collaboration was like.
So, I never actually met or spoke to JP, but he was involved right from the beginning across the project. I think Kitty can probably speak to exactly what his role was. He definitely saw the scripts, was very happy with the changes that we made because there are some quite big departures from the book. It is an adaptation in the true sense. But yeah, we wanted him to be happy with what we were putting on screen. Yeah, so he was involved throughout the process, but yeah, I didn't.
I mean, that's it. Yeah, he was, and he's completely thrilled by the project. Yeah, we wanted to give Grace the kind of runway to take the book and make it her own, which she absolutely did. But things like relocating it to Cornwall, what she did with Miles, what comes in later episodes, which is slightly different in terms of the sort of denouement. He's so happy. So yeah, across all the scripts, across all the edits, and yeah, he's happy man.
If the author's happy, then I mean, it's just
Yeah, which is that's a
Great,
scary
right?
thing, but he
Yeah.
really is. Yeah.
wonderful.
Hi, congratulations everybody. I'm Patrick from the Netherlands. It's going out there as well in the future. I've got a question for James, because we've seen you now in so many sort of different parts and so many different roles over there as well. Grantchester, Happy Valley, War and Peace, and now this excellent drama again. How do you choose your roles in general? Because they're all so different.
I have a fantastic agent who's here, who is genuinely like brilliant. I have Saskia Mulder, who's my agent in the UK, and there's a great team over in the US. And I think very early on, I was very clear that I wanted, as Neve said, the privilege of our job is to be invited into these worlds, these characters, and learn so much about not like life. You do a Second World War drama, and you get to go and be a historian in the British Library for however long, and then have an emotional kind of connection with that particular piece of history. If you do it really well, then you're going to get a few more offers for Second World War dramas coming your way. And the brave thing, and this is where I have great team, is to say no to those and saying, okay, right, we're going to go a different route and try and keep learning, keep expanding. And so to have actually the real blessing was having Grantchester and Happy Valley come out almost concurrently, because it sort of set me up as someone who wanted to go on those journeys and keep it new. And if you've got a great team who bring you great projects constantly, which I do, I'm very, very lucky, then yeah, you can kind of carry on that journey of learning and surprising. So yeah, keep expressing. Also, you often ask, what's the dream role next, and what do you want to do next? And it's really hard to know. As Neve says, these stories, these roles, they land on your desk, and the ones which are inherently surprising are the ones you didn't know existed. So if you constantly look for the sort of, I can't believe this hasn't been told before type thing, then rather than going, I've always wanted to play JFK, I should go and do that, you know what I mean? You just search for the surprise factor, and then you'll keep it fresh.
Thank you.
To confirm, you're not being JFK, are you? Thanks. Any more? Any more?
Can I just ask Julia Cutler on freelance? I heard Kitty at the beginning, but James, are you one of the producers on this as well?
Yes.
Am I?
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
one
yeah.
of the producers, aren't you? So was it quite easy to see yourself in that role? How quickly was it before you decided?
Do you know what? I think I can say this because it's you know.
I think
you
you
might-
can.
you
I
might
think
know.
it's fine.
Yeah.
I
So
think it's
originally, very early on, when we read the book. So Kitty, this is, as Kitty said at the beginning, this is the first book we as a company optioned. It was in our first week of working together, and in very early conversations, I was going to play Miles. With the conversation with JP early on, I think probably because he'd seen Happy Valley, exactly as you were saying, he'd seen me play a villain, and he thought, oh, he's going to be a great villain for this. And for the first sort of bit of time in the development process, that was the idea. And then I don't know what happened, but at a certain point, I can't remember which point it was, I thought, for that reason, maybe move into the other role, and that felt more of a challenge for some reason. I hadn't played that kind of everyman, and Pete's journey and his own sort of discovery around his own masculinity and being this avoidant, sort of young modern man who thinks he's doing everything right, thinks he's always on the right side of the argument, and actually realizes that he isn't, and the world is not as benevolent, benign place as he thinks it is. It was a really interesting, different challenge, and I'd not done that. And so, as the development process moved forward, I actually got more and more excited by Pete. And now thinking about me, I just don't want to touch Miles. James has done such a good job, and there is no one better. Step forth the new villain who's perfect.
Are you dropping villains for a while?
Well, I don't know. Now I've done Pete, maybe I'm going to go back. I don't know. As I say, the next thing is always a surprise. It has to be the one which is the surprise. So I don't know. We'll see.
Paul, did you have a question?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I had a
Pass
shout.
the microphone, Julia, to Paul. Thank you.
Sorry, Paul Simper, freelance journalist. It was a question for the other James. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about being on that terrifying rock.
Everyone's scared for you.
Yeah. Well, I just had to run towards the rock, and I thought this will be cool.
And you were supposed to stop.
I was supposed to stop, so I could hear them all very far away. There was a drone, and I could hear a bit. And I was like, I better keep this drone going because I'm going right to the edge. So
No attachment. Nothing's just you.
there actually was there was some with an attachment and some without an attachment. It depended on the shot, but I think the one that I did there was no attachment. It was like
Is it very windy?
it was. Yeah, it was.
Well done.
Heights, I don't know what to say.
Spoiler alert, everything was fine because he's here, so yeah, not really. Thank you so much. If there's no more questions, I've got to remind you again about the embargo. That's the 12th of December. Any questions, go to your teams at Organic and Janice at OTV. But please give a round of applause for our wonderful panel.
Woohoo.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Are you staying for the round table? That's just going to be
Very
me.
much.
I don't want to be in a round table.
It's a one-to-one with a lot.
I know.
Very
No,
expensive.
I'm doing a round
isn't it?
table, so I'm guessing if the guy from TV Times, Stephen.
Steve, yeah.
Yeah, he'll stay for a round table.
Yeah,
won't he?
yeah. No, I'll just.
Then there'll be someone from Bauer, I guess.